It was 4 o'clock in the morning in Moscow, Idaho, the kind of time when even the streets feel asleep, inside a quiet house near the University of Idaho. For friends were in their rooms. The lights were off. The hallway was dark. The air felt still, like the whole house was holding its breath. Then something changed. A sound broke the silence. Not a loud scream. Not a crash. Just a strange noise, soft, quick, and wrong. Like footsteps that didn't belong there. Minutes later, the night that started like any other would become one of the most shocking crime stories America had heard in years. By morning, for college students, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin would be gone. And the scariest part? For a little while, nobody outside that house even knew. Not the neighbors, not the campus, not the town. It was like the house had been swallowed by darkness, and the darkness kept its secret. Somewhere inside, a roommate woke up. She listened. She tried to tell herself it was nothing. College houses make noise, right? People walk around. Doors open. Someone laughs. Someone drops something. But this felt different. She lay still and stared into the dark, trying to hear what was happening. She told herself, it's probably just Kaylee's dog, or maybe someone is still awake. Then she heard another sound, closer this time. Her heart started to beat faster. She pulled her blanket tighter, like a blanket could stop fear from getting in. And then she heard what sounded like crying. She froze. Crying at 4 a.m. is not normal. It's not a party sound. It's not a college kid's being loud sound. It's the kind of sound that makes your stomach drop. She wanted to call out. She wanted to text someone. But fear can make you do strange things. Sometimes fear tells you to stay quiet. Sometimes it tells you to pretend you're not there. The roommate stayed in her room, listening. A door opened somewhere. A door closed. Silence again. The silence was the worst part, because it felt like something was hiding inside it. And then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, calm, like whoever was walking did not rush. Like they knew the house. The roommate's eyes widened. Her mouth went dry. She held her breath. Then the footsteps came closer and closer. And right then, she realized something that made her blood feel cold. Whoever was out there was not supposed to be there. But before she could move, the footsteps stopped right outside her door. And the doorknob did not turn. Not yet. Before we go back and understand how this night began, you need to know what made this story so hard for people to forget. It wasn't only the horror of what happened. It was a feeling that danger had slipped into a normal home, into a normal college town, and nobody saw it coming. So let's rewind. Earlier that Saturday, Moscow felt peaceful. Small town peaceful. The air was cold, and the campus was alive in the way campuses are on weekends. People walking, cars passing, music playing somewhere far away. Madison and Kaylee were best friends. They had the kind of friendship where they could sit together and say nothing and still feel okay. Xana and Ethan were a couple. They were young, busy, and excited about the future the way so many college students are. That night, all four did normal things. They went out. They ate. They talked. They laughed. They made plans for tomorrow and next week and later. Nothing about the evening screamed danger. And that's what makes this story so terrifying. Because the last hours of their lives looked like millions of other college nights across the United States. At some point, they all made it back to the house on King Road, a house they knew well, a place that felt safe, a place with bedrooms, blankets, chargers on the floor, and cups in the kitchen, a place that felt like home. The house settled down. Doors closed. Phones went quiet. The dark pulled across the windows like a curtain. Outside, Moscow stayed still. Then, in the early morning, something or someone came toward that house. No one inside could see it coming. And when the roommate woke up later, it was because her brain had picked up on something her eyes could not see. A sound, a shift, a wrongness. Now we're back in that hallway, back in that darkness. The roommate stared at her door, listening to the quiet. Then she heard movement again, like someone was leaving. She slowly opened her door, just a crack, just enough to look. And in the dim light, she saw a figure walking past. A person dressed in dark clothing. a face partly covered, walking calmly toward the exit. For a second, time seemed to stop, because the roommate didn't know who it was. And she didn't know what had just happened in the rooms upstairs and down the hall. But she knew one thing for sure. A stranger was inside their home, and he was walking away. The figure walked past her door like he belonged there. The roommate couldn't move. Her body felt frozen, like her muscles forgot how to work. She watched him go down the hallway. She saw him head toward the back door. Then he was gone. The house became quiet again, too quiet. She stood there for a moment, staring at the dark space where he had been. Her mind tried to make a normal reason for what she saw. Maybe it's a friend, she thought. Maybe someone came to pick something up. Maybe I'm just half asleep. But her heart did not believe those words. Her hands shook as she slowly closed her door again. She locked it. She sat on her bed and listened. Nothing. No talking. No laughing. No footsteps. Only silence and her own breathing. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. The time felt slow, like a clock that didn't want to move. She wanted to call someone, but fear kept pushing her down like a heavy blanket. Her phone felt too bright in her hand, like the screen would give her away. She told herself, wait, just wait. Maybe it's over. Outside the window, the night was still. The streetlights made pale circles on the road. Everything looked normal, even though nothing felt normal. Then her thoughts returned to the sound she heard earlier, crying movement, strange quiet. She tried to remember the last normal moment. Earlier that night, the house had felt busy and safe. The kind of safe you feel when you are surrounded by people you know. This was a shared house. People came and went. Friends visited. Music played sometimes. There were shoes by the door, jackets on chairs, dishes in the sink. It didn't feel like a place where something horrible could happen. That's why nobody was ready. Hours before, Madison and Kaylee had been together, doing what best friends do, talking, laughing, checking their phones, making plans. Xana and Ethan had been together too, like many couples on a weekend night. They came home expecting the same thing everyone expects at the end of a long day. Sleep, a quiet room, a normal morning. When the lights went off, the house didn't seem dangerous. It seemed like a normal college home in a quiet town. But somewhere outside in that cold darkness, someone was moving with a purpose. And that person came close enough to step inside. Back in her room, the roommate kept listening. Still nothing. At some point, she thought about texting one of the others. Just a quick message. Are you okay? But what if they were sleeping and it woke them up? What if it was nothing and she looked silly? What if it wasn't nothing and the message made noise at the wrong time? Her mind ran in circles. So she stayed quiet. The hours slowly crawled toward morning. The sky became a little lighter, turning from deep black to dark blue. And that's when the house started to feel strange in a different way. Not scary loud, scary empty. Usually, someone would get water. Someone would walk to the bathroom. Someone would play a video on their phone. Something. But now it felt like the house was holding its breath. The roommate finally left her room, moving carefully. She stepped into the hallway and listened again. Still quiet. She walked slowly, as if the floor might squeak and break the silence. She looked toward the stairs, toward the other rooms. Nothing moved. No one called out. She felt a sudden urge to get help, even if she didn't understand why. She grabbed her phone and called friends. She sent messages. Hey, can you come over? Something feels wrong. Friends started to arrive. Not a big crowd at first, just a few people checking in, trying to help, trying to make sense of things. This is a low part of the story, the part where everything feels confusing instead of clear. Nobody wanted to believe the worst. People said things like, maybe they're asleep. Maybe they're not answering because their phones are dead. Maybe they're just tired. But the feeling in the air would not go away. The house felt wrong. The friends walked around carefully. They called names. They knocked. They waited for someone to answer. No answer. The roommate stood with her phone in her hand, staring at the screen. Her finger hovered over the emergency number. She didn't want to press it because pressing it would mean she was admitting something terrible could be true. Then one of the friends looked at her and said, "We need to call." Her finger finally moved. She dialed 911. When the call connected, her voice sounded small, like it didn't belong to her. She tried to explain. She tried to speak clearly. She tried to say why they were scared. And on the other end of the line, the dispatcher listened, then asked questions that made her stomach twist. "Is anyone awake? Can you check? Are they breathing?" The roommate looked toward the rooms again. The whole house felt like it was leaning into silence. Then outside in the distance, a sound began to rise. Not music, not laughter. Sirens, coming closer, fast. And as those sirens grew louder, the roommate realized something that hit her like cold water. This was no longer a strange night. This was now an emergency. And in just a few moments, the police would step inside the house and everything would change forever. The sirens stopped outside the house. Red and blue lights flashed against the walls, sliding through the windows like moving shadows. Police officers stepped inside carefully. Their faces were serious. Their voices were low. The house that once felt like home now felt heavy and cold. Officers went room by room. They spoke quietly into radios. They asked the roommates and friends to step back, to go outside, to stay together. And then the truth came out, for students were found inside the house. They were not waking up. They were not answering. They were gone. The words felt unreal, like something from a bad dream that should end any second. Neighbors began to gather outside. Some watched from their windows. Some stood on the sidewalk in pajamas and coats, holding phones but not knowing who to call. Moscow, Idaho had never seen a morning like this. The campus went silent. Classes were canceled. Students hugged each other and cried. Parents called their children again and again just to hear their voices. News spread fast, faster than anyone expected. For students, one house, one night, people across the United States asked the same question at the same time. How could this happen? Police worked quickly. They taped off the area. They collected evidence. They spoke to everyone who had been inside the house or near it. But one detail stood out and scared people the most. There was no forced entry, no broken door, no shattered window. Whoever did this had walked in and walked out. For days, fear hung over the town. People locked their doors earlier. They checked windows twice. They looked over their shoulders when walking alone. Parents begged their children to come home. Police said there was no danger to the public. But people didn't know what to believe. A crime like this didn't feel random. It felt planned. The house on King Road became a symbol of fear. Cars drove past slowly. Some people left flowers nearby. Others couldn't bring themselves to look at it at all. Then came the questions. Why that house? Why those students? And who was the man in dark clothing seen walking out that night? Weeks passed. Tips flooded in. Thousands of them. Police followed leads, checked videos, tracked movements. The case became one of the most talked about crime stories in America. And then, one day, everything shifted. Police announced an arrest. A suspect had been taken into custody. His name shocked people. He wasn't a local troublemaker. He wasn't someone known for violence. He was a graduate student. Quiet, intelligent, someone who studied criminal behavior. People couldn't understand it. How could someone who studied crime be accused of committing one of the most horrifying crimes of the decade? Court documents revealed new details. Evidence, timelines, phone records, DNA. Suddenly, the night that felt so confusing began to take shape. The footsteps, the crying, the calm walk out of the house. It all started to make sense. But even with an arrest, the pain didn't disappear. Families mourned children who would never come home. Friends carried memories that would never fade. A town tried to heal from a wound it never expected. The house was later torn down. Some said it was to erase the pain. Others said you can never really erase something like that, because the story didn't just belong to that house. It belonged to everyone who wondered how safety can disappear in a single night. The Idaho Student Murders reminded America of something uncomfortable but true. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks quietly into a place that feels safe. Sometimes it wears an ordinary face. And sometimes it leaves behind questions that will never fully go away. The night 4 students were killed did not just change Moscow, Idaho. It changed how people locked their doors, how they listened in the dark, and how they realized that even the quietest towns can hide the loudest secrets.